I started reading R.K. after Khushwant Singh and Ruskin Bond. It was Ruskin Bond and Khushwant Singh which made my interest in Indian literature. After reading Khushwant Singh and Ruskin Bond, I went on to read Anita Desai, Kamala Markandeya, or you can say Ruth Pawar Jabbarwala, and then R.K. Narayan also was there in this list. The first work by R.K. Narayan which I laid my hands on was Swami and Friends. Actually, what happened was in UGC NET 2018 examination, there was a question from this particular novel. That the question was about which sports has talked about in this particular novel, Swami and Friends. So the answer to that question was cricket, but I marked hockey in that particular examination. As I didn't read this novel, that particular question from Swami and Friends was wrong for me in UGC NET 2018 examination. And when I came back to Rome, I decided that I am going to read all the works by R.K. Narayan. So it was Swami and Friends which was the first work I laid my hands on. And after that it was The Guide, then Man-Eater of Malgudi, and then Painter of Science, or you can say another work is Vendor of Sweets. So I have almost read all the works except a few ones like Bachelor of Arts, or you can say his another work, The English Teacher or Financial Expert. I have not read these 3 to 4 novels, but almost all the complete works of R.K. Narayan I have read a few years back. Coming back, we cannot understand Indian literature, we cannot understand the beginning of Indian literature if we don't know who R.K. Narayan was. His writing style, or you can say the way he narrates a story, narrates a novel, describes everything. He used to write everything in so much detailed manner that anyone reading R.K. Narayan will fall in love with his writing. You might have read his short story An Astrologer's Day, and you might have found out that how he focuses more on little details around the narrator, around the character. So he is one of those writers who is much more focused on expressing rather than showing. When you read him, you go into the world of R.K. Narayan. His stories are incomplete. Whenever you read R.K. Narayan, or if you read some good artist, or you can say if you read a good writer, you find that their novels are incomplete. They don't just come onto a happy ending or a bad ending. They don't just go onto a tragedy. They don't just go on to conclusion. Take an example of Anita Desai's In Custody, and you will find that how she ends up her story in custody in the middle way. There is a reason behind it. The writers deliberately ends up the story incomplete. They don't just go on concluding the novel. They don't just go on ending the novel. They simply finish it incompletely, so that you can have your own thoughts, so that you can imagine what would have happened after this. A writer leaves you to think. That is same goes with R.K. Narayan's work, The Guide. So in this video, we are going to discuss The Guide by R.K. Narayan. I deliberately picked this novel just because it was the first Sahitya Academy Award winner. The second reason is it has some association with spiritual world, with spirituality, which I personally like a lot. So it was the first Sahitya Academy Award winner, and then it has spiritual associations. So there is also a movie based on this particular novel, The Guide. And in that movie, Devanand has played a role. So before you go on to watching this movie, I encourage you to read the novel, and then you can compare that movie, or then you can compare that novel with the movie, so that you can find out that whether the movie has done justice with R.K. Narayan or not. So before continuing this video, if you are one of those students who want to crack UGC NET examination, GATE examination, or any MA entrance examination, then you can simply place your order of our organized study material on English literature. You can check the link in the description below to know more about our study material. Now without any further delay, let's begin this video. So in the upcoming part of this video, we are only going to discuss the summary of this novel, and we are also going to look at some elements that may help you to understand the novel in a better way. So without any further ado, let's talk about our central character of this particular novel named as Raju. So the story opens with our protagonist named Raju, who was a guide and who has his father's shop as a business. So this Raju has a shop of his own, and side by side he does some work of guide. He takes the tourists and shows them what Malgudi is all about. So now what happens was, a couple came to Malgudi, Marco and Rosie. Marco was a research scholar. Marco was much more interested in the ancient civilization. So his main purpose of coming to Malgudi was to do some research work. Whereas his wife, who was passionate about dance, so they visited Malgudi and thought about spending time in this particular city. They hired the guide Raju, who is the central character of this novel. So now what happens was, when the novel proceeds, we find that Marco and Rosie have clashes frequently. Marco was a research scholar and he doesn't have time to spend with Rosie, and that is the bone of contention between both of them. So this fight started getting more frequently, and at the end what happened was Rosie and Marco fall apart. Rosie left her husband Marco, and what she decided was she would rather go with the guide Raju, who loves her. So there is a couple, Marco and Rosie decides to separate herself from Marco and go with Raju. So what Raju did was, Raju took Rosie to his own house. So Raju supported his love, Rosie. He supported his passion of dance. Rosie was so much happy that he got Raju. By and by, novel proceeds and Rosie became very popular. She became a very popular dancer, and now she became successful, and it did not change her. When she was married to Marco, she was at that time also interested in dance as much as she is interested in now after her success. So this new couple, Raju and Rosie, became rich, they became affluent, they became wealthy. And by, as the novel proceeds, we find that Raju gets more greedy, he gets more selfish, he gets more protected towards Rosie. He became insecure about Rosie. He did not want her old husband, Marco, came into her life. He got involved in some activities which Rosie did not want him to do. So what Raju did was, he made some fake signatures on documents which are associated with Rosie. And one day everyone found that Raju did some fake signatures on the documents which were associated to Rosie. So this is the event of forgery. This is the case of forgery. And Raju was put behind the bars. Raju was imprisoned for the next 2 years. And for the next 2 years, he remained away from everyone. He remained away from his own mother. He remained away from his Rosie. He remained away from everyone. And for the next 2 years, he remained in the prison. And when he came back from the prison, he found that he had no place to go anywhere. He could not go to his own mother's house. He could not go to his Rosie's house. He could not go anywhere. So what he did was, he just went to a random village and sat by the bank of a river. Now what happened was, a few people from the village thought that Raju was a saint and he was doing some meditation on the bank of the river. So everyone misunderstood Raju as a saint, and Raju had no place to go anywhere. So what Raju decided to remain in this new profession of saint. He pretended himself to be a saint. And by, the events started taking place in favor of Raju, and he actually became a saint at the end of the novel. So this is a kind of a story which talks about a journey of a man who was a sinner once, and then he became a saint. You might have read a quotation or a proverb that every saint was a sinner once. So you can say that this novel talks about that. This novel revolves around that particular quotation, that every saint was a sinner once. But I leave it on to you how you perceive this novel, because this novel is incomplete. This novel can have multiplication of meanings. This novel can have proliferation of meanings. That is the beauty of a novel. That is the beauty of a writer, to leave the stories incomplete in the middle. So you have to analyze the novel by yourself. So I leave this novel up to you. And I again suggest you to read the novel rather than watching the movie. Reading takes you to a new level of consciousness. It is not like watching a movie. It will ask questions from you. It will take you to the deep inner realities of life. So I leave it on you to decide what you think about this central character Raju, or the protagonist of this novel, The Guide. So I hope you found the video worth your time. That's it for this video. Thank you.